December 21st, 2023, IGN's Wesleyan Poole wrote at the time, Sony reportedly pressured its studios to make big cuts amid increasing development costs. Layoffs reportedly discussed at Insomniac and other PlayStation studios. Apparently, this article came out right after the Insomniac leaks. Following the release of data stolen from Marvel Spider-Man 2's developer Insomniac, files have revealed Sony-owned studios were recently under pressure to make staff cuts amid big development costs that shine a light on the state of AAA development. Now, you're probably wondering, well, maybe I already know this story, but VG, why are you even bothering with this story? I'm going ahead to start out the story with the evidence before even showing you the reason why, because these last few days, I've seen a lot of people talking and saying that VG, you're an X-bot, you're a liar and all that. Now, I understand that people want to name call, so I ask them a very simple question. Can you prove that what I'm saying is the truth or not the truth? I haven't seen anybody actually take on that challenge, so they can keep running around in circles. But again, like I said, I like to stay focused on what we're talking about. However, this comment is from another audience member who said that in this whole conversation about the, multi-plat games, that you just need to take a sales hit on a few exclusives. That's what they're proposing, on a few exclusive titles, and that will boost console sales and the install base further. That's a worthy trade-off. Most games for a console will always be third-party anyways. Every game being third-party is an L for a console manufacturer that wants to grow its user base. Now, these are a series of statements that have been put together, and I said, so PlayStation has been taking L's since 2020, having their games on PC. Take a few hits, like how they've laid off tons of developers and closed down studios. That's not good business acumen. To which he replied and said, take a hit on a few games doesn't mean going minus. It will boost console sales that will in turn generate more game sales in general for the platform. Then he said, exclusive games acts as a funnel. Funny you mentioned closing down studios. Didn't Microsoft close down Tango Gameworks despite Hi-Fi Rush being a huge success? Now, there's a reason I read this article at first, because we know that in the face of the Spider-Man game pretty much being in development and close to being launched, here's what happened. Elsewhere in these documents, files show Insomniac was under pressure to make budget cuts with 50 to 75 layoffs earmarked for the studio. Insomniac staff reportedly discussed how to remove 50 to 75 people strategically as requested by Sony, with the best option supposedly to cut deeply into the Wolverine and Spider-Man 3 teams and replacing staff with team members from the unannounced Ratchet & Clank game and a new unannounced IP. So this hits Dante that you're saying they should take. It's the developers that are apparently taking the hits, because like I've said to many people, that PlayStation is not going to take a hit for anyone. They'll find a way to make that money or save that money. The same with any corporation, don't get me wrong. But if you take a notice at the people talking about Hi-Fi Rush, why not go ahead and look at Tango Gameworks' history? The Evil Within 2, those games were multi-plat, didn't do much, right? And then when they made Hi-Fi Rush and launched it, they launched it on Xbox and PC. The audience for a game like Hi-Fi Rush is more of an audience that's more akin to be on the Nintendo Switch. So the game basically was launched for a target audience that was just not there. Big mistake from the onset. And then when they started to go ahead and launch the game on the Switch, it was already kind of, in my opinion, somewhat late. It was kind of a miss. It's a good game, but basically a game that pretty much carried the Astrobot level, if it even did as much as Astrobot in sales. So sure, the game would have made them some money, but not enough to keep a whole studio sustainable. That's not how it works. So when I said this, I said, Hi-Fi Rush was an exclusive at launch. Xbox learned a critical lesson there. Too late to turn around for a studio costing money with minimal sales, and the Evil Within games, which barely sold a lot. In fact, let's look at some data. The Evil Within sales data. We just look at it real quick. Let's not bother. This says the first game sold 4 million copies. The second one sold almost 4 times less. Do you see what happened to The Evil Within? That game literally dwindled in players, and its revenue to have kept Tango Gameworks, open for that long was just not there. So again, I'm not making this stuff up. I've looked at the little points that I can say, why would they even go ahead and sell this studio off? Then there are the reports that once the creative director left, it didn't seem like they wanted to go ahead and build a studio from scratch. I think they should have promoted the guy that came up with the Hi-Fi Rush idea. I think he should have gotten the promotion. Shoot, they should have probably maybe even moved him to another studio with a big role and brought somebody else for a promotion to Tango Gameworks. Not saying that closing Tango Gameworks or selling it off to Krafton was a good idea, but the studio was not making money, if you judging by their games that they had. And what I've said before, that these corporations, they'll close up shop. But Xbox at least is taking its games multi-platform so that it avoids as much of this closing up shop as possible. PlayStation, on the other hand, is pressuring its developers, or at this time was pressuring its developers, to make cuts. Let's keep reading. According to the leaked document, Sony has called on staff cuts across its first-party studios. Officially, we know a number of layoffs at PlayStation Studios, including a wave of redundancies at Dreams developer Media Molecule, significant cuts at Destiny developer Bungie, and layoffs at The Last of Us developer Naughty Dog. Meanwhile, the documents reveal internal concern at the growing development costs of Insomniac's games. Can you imagine this? According to Kotaku's report on The Breach, Spider-Man 2's development cost ran $30 million over its original $270 million and ultimately needs to sell 7.2 million units to break even. The leaked documents show increasingly precarious nature of AAA video game production, which some experts have called unsustainable. So once again, they cannot take these hits, Dante, that you're actually saying they should take. Why? Because they're literally gutting their own staff to be able to make it work. You can budget for a game, but once you get deep into development, now you got to ship, but you now have a delta of another $30 million, which the game came out to be $315 million. When it came out after it was all said and done, the game was no longer $270, it was $315. So the cost actually grew. So how then can you recommend that PlayStation take a hit? I'm just asking you a question. Because if we don't ask those questions and look within the business side of things, it's interesting because you then asked me and said, Hi-Fi Rush and Spider-Man 2 generated profit. They weren't going minus. If a game is going minus, if the cost is greater than the sales and it's bleeding, then yes, it's valid for layoffs and studio closes. Well, it made profits and they still laid people off. Not only that, they still went ahead and laid people off this year. PlayStation hit with more layoffs. This is March 4th. Did we forget? Over a month ago. Following recent game cancellations. So even if those games made money, because of how expensive they are, they can't take a hit. I've made videos upon videos to show you guys how this business model from PlayStation actually is being represented, especially from what we saw. Some people just don't want to embrace, you gotta embrace the truth. You said this, but that was not the case for these two games. So it was an incorrect decision for the gutting. Or are you just going to advocate for company greed? I'm not advocating for any company greed. I'm just telling you that if a company is not going to go out there and sell units because it wants to pretend that it can do exclusivity, it would have to gut its staff. Do y'all remember that I always draw the little, very low effort, painting to depict this every given time? And it's important that we actually have this picture etched in our brains. Because if we don't, we're going to basically be following that these companies, when they keep saying these things like, oh, let's do exclusivity, let's do this, let's do that. It doesn't work. In their market for PlayStation and Xbox, they have live service games on their case. So let's draw it again. They launch a game. Let's just call the game TLOU. Anyone. Right? They sell game exclusive to only PlayStation platform. Only on PlayStation. They're making second game, cost to become $200 million. Let's just call it TLOU2, right? And then they realize, crud, the costs are expensive. They sell it only on PlayStation, but they need more money, so they sell it again on PC. Well, when they're selling on PC, they're competing now with PC sales of other games, third-party games, and PlayStation games, third-party games, and now, Xbox games have now come into the competition. What do? They make a remaster. After remaster, they go back and sell it again to PlayStation and PC, of which only so many people are willing to buy the game again. What else do? They gut their developers. I just showed you. I've seen a lot of people saying VG is like, he hates PlayStation, blah, blah, blah. I've told every single one of them, come over and prove what I'm saying wrong. Prove it. I'm sitting here. You and I have the exact same information. You and I have access to the exact same articles. You and I have access to the exact same data points. So go ahead and prove it. Prove if this is the truth or if this is hatred. Because for some people, I guess truth now becomes hatred. But again, it's gaslighting. I know this tactic. This is not something new. So when you say, what am I on about? This is exactly what I'm trying to point out. This right here is exactly what I'm trying to point out. Xbox has a strategy that is trying to avoid this from happening. If it avoids that from happening, it continues to basically keep these. This is the most important piece of game development right here. The developers, because they're the ones that make games. If you can keep them, make them happy, pay them, they make you games. When they make you games, you look good. I mean, obviously, that's why they have games. PlayStation, on the other hand, has canceled how many just in this year and last year? Do you guys already see the difference? And we haven't even started talking about budgets. 270 million, 315 million. While Xbox can make games like Avowed and make games like South of Midnight, still make games like Call of Duty, there's something that needs a little bit of work in the PlayStation ecosystem. And that work is not going to be resolved by fanboys continuing to bow and worship PlayStation. It's going to be resolved by people understanding that there's a gaping hole in their business. If they want to be hardware salespeople, they can compete with Asus and Dell and HP. They're not the first to sell gargantuan amounts of hardware. Like, you know what I mean? But if they're going to do software, which is in the sense of gaming, the most important piece, because now hardware is pretty much whatever you want these days. Your TV can be gaming hardware. Your gaming PC, your handheld, your phone. PlayStation needs to bring games to the table. That's what they need to do. But how are they going to bring games to the table when their business model is causing and forcing them to pretty much gut games, gut devs, gut studios, and all kinds of things that are not just, conducive for business because of the economy and the market? It's not really all their fault. The economy and the market has basically been a factor that's been playing against them. It's been playing against every company. So they need to shield themselves. And that takes a lot of steps. That's it for me. Peace out.